The movie begins with an AA meeting in a rehab center, and Darby's there from almost dying from overdosing to drugs, but we see that she still hates the rehab center as she believes that she'll never get cured of her addiction and just sees it as a waste of time. As she's arguing with the leader, she's called for a phone call, and it's a family friend Joe, and he informs her that her mom had suffered a brain aneurysm and she's gone to the hospital for an emergency surgery. She tries to call her sister, and they tell her that no outgoing call is allowed, and she tells them that her mom is in the hospital and that she needs to go, but they don't believe her since she used the same excuse last week to escape from rehab. She then goes to Jade, another addict who had a secret phone, and she blackmails her into letting her use it and calls her sister Devin and asks her to call the rehab so they can let her leave. But Devin tells her to stay there and that she has no time for her BS right now, and Devin also tells her not to call her back and shuts off the phone. Darby is devastated, but she doesn't give up, and she sneaks into the maintenance room and steals a hammer and a screwdriver, which she uses to break out of the rehab center, and she steals the boss's car, and she finds a phone and drugs stashed inside, and she starts the car using the screwdriver and tries to call her sister while driving to Salt Lake City. Devin doesn't pick up the phone and just sends a text telling her to stay where she is, but Darby continues driving, but her phone alerts her that there's a traffic jam ahead, so she then takes another road and parks on the side, and then takes out the drugs that she found and contemplates using it. But before she does, she dozes off, and we see the last time she OD'd in her car while her sister was crying for help, and she's suddenly woken up by a window knock from Officer Ron, so she immediately hides her stash and tells him that she was going to Salt Lake City. But he tells her that all interstate roads are closed due to a developing snowstorm, and he tells her that she can either go back where she came from or go to a visitor center down the road for the night. She chooses the latter, obviously, and goes to the visitor center, and there she finds only 4 people: Ash, Lars, and a married couple, Ed and Sandy. Darby goes to the bathroom to try and call back Devin, but there was absolutely no signal. She then hears that Ed has a weak signal in the middle of the parking lot, so she goes there to find the signal, which doesn't really go well as she walks around trying to get some signal, and she hears a muffled noise coming from the van parked in the parking lot. She gets close to the van and clears out the snow from the windows and finds a little girl tied up in there, and Darby freaks out and tries to open the door, but it's locked, and she then tries to call 911, but again there was no signal, and she then takes a picture of the plates, and she sees someone is watching her from the cabin, so she goes to her car to get the screwdriver, and Ed then shortly follows her and asks her if everything was okay, and she tells him that she's just searching for a signal, and he tells her to come back to the cabin before she freezes to death. She follows him back into the center and looks around trying to figure out who the owner of the van is, and by extension, who it was that kidnapped the girl. Ed invites everyone to play poker. Lars, who was sitting in the corner, initially refuses, but says he will play if they play his game called BS. And he teaches them the rules, and as they play, Darby asks them questions about who they are and where they were going. We learn that Ed is a former Marine, and throughout the game, we learn where everyone is going except for Lars, who for a second hesitates to answer the question. Darby then remembers the plates and figures out Lars is the only person that's actually from that place, making him the prime suspect for the kidnapping. The game ends and Lars loses, which he doesn't really take well, as he gets very upset and throws the cards away. Darby leaves to go to the female bathroom, which is boarded up for repairs, and she tries to send the plate number to the police, but the message fails to send, and she then uses a hole in the wall to go back outside, and she successfully breaks into the van, and she promises the girl to save her, but before she can cut her handcuffs, Lars enters the van, and Darby hides in there, and without knowing, Lars reveals the girl's name as Jay, and he then tells her that he forgot to bring her a snack, and goes back inside. Darby also uses this opportunity to go back to the bathroom through the wall. Lars comes back to the van shortly after, but sees another footprint, and he runs back to the cabin to look for Darby, but as he gets to the bathroom, he finds Ash and Darby kissing. After he leaves, Darby tells Ash everything she saw, then Ash comes up with a small plan and tells her to run back outside so Lars follows her. She agrees with the plan and goes back outside as Ash picks up a nail gun and goes to the bathroom. Darby goes back to the van and fully unties Jay, and Jay says where are the guys that kidnapped her, revealing that Ash is also one of the kidnappers. As Darby sees outside, she sees both Ash and Lars talking, and Ash is mad at Lars and takes his gun away and gives him the nail gun instead. As they were distracted, Darby makes a run for it, but as she gets back to the bathroom, she finds Ash waiting for her, and he takes her phone and puts a gun to her head. He then learns a little about her and reveals that Jay has Addison's disease, which causes an adrenaline overdose if she becomes too excited or stressed. Sandy then comes on knocking, and Ash tells her that he will kill everyone if she talks. Darby doesn't tell anything to Sandy, and they all go to the back of the main room, and Ed is suspicious, especially about Lars, and starts asking questions, but Ash deflects by revealing Darby's father was also a Marine who offed himself. While this is going on, Jay fully unties herself and runs into the woods, and Ash and Darby see her through the window, and Darby leaves first faking being upset about her dad, and Ash also follows her, and she waits for him to attack Ash with her hammer as he gets in, but this plan doesn't work as he overpowers her, and during the struggle, Darby manages to take his car key. He then takes her outside, and he and Lars force her to help them look for Jay. As they're walking, Lars reveals that they are foster brothers raised by a man named Uncle Kenny, who runs a human trafficking ring. We see that while Ash understands that Lars believes that he's finding Jay a better home, just as the one he found after being an orphan, the only problem is they took her away from a wealthy, loving family. As they were going downstairs, Darby uses the opportunity to use a flashlight to blind the kidnappers and runs away. Ash shoots one blind shot, which Ed and Sandy hear, then Ed goes outside to see what's going on, but finds Jay unconscious in the snow. He takes her back in, and Sandy, who used to be a nurse, looks for a pulse, and Darby then enters the cabin and tells Ed and Sandy about the kidnappers. Ash and Lars also make it back to the parking lot shortly after, and fearing Ed might have a gun, they stay outside and demand they release the girl. Ed refuses, but then Ash tells them the girl will die if she doesn't take her meds, and Sandy confirms this, and Ed then tells Darby to hide the keys, and tells Ash he will give them their keys and let them leave if they give them Jay's medication. Ash gets impatient, and he and Lars grab gasoline from their van and start dousing the cabin, and they then threaten to burn all of them inside, and this makes Sandy cave in, who tells Ed to just give up the girl, but Ed refuses and keeps bargaining with Ash. Jay is woken up from the noise, and she immediately identifies Sandy as her maid, and the movie cuts to a flashback and reveals Sandy helped Ash and Lars take Jay from her home under the agreement that she'll be used for ransom. When we come back to the present, Sandy reveals that she met the two on the internet and that they've agreed to return the girl after they get paid $2 million in ransom. Unaware of this truth, Ed is shocked to hear this, but Sandy tries to explain herself by saying that she did this for both of them as they are struggling financially. She then tells Ash that Ed doesn't have a gun, and the two barge in and they give Jay her meds and ask for the car keys. Ed then tells Darby not to give Ash the keys as he will kill them if he gets what he wants, but Ash still shoots and kills both Ed and Sandy. He then threatens to kill Jay if Darby doesn't tell him where the keys are, and she tells him that she hid them behind the cabin in the snow, and he uses his nail gun to staple one of Darby's arms to the wall so she can't escape. Darby's phone then receives a text message, and Ash reads it and informs her that her mom has died. Another text then comes in and reveals that Officer Ron is on the way to the cabin because her message reached the police station. Ash gives his gun to Lars and tells him to shoot her if she moves before leaving to search for the car keys. Darby then whispers to Jay to turn off the lights, and Jay slowly starts moving to the light switch, and Lars then tells her to stop, but he didn't have the heart to hurt her, and as he was distracted, Darby snorts the gun to make her feel numb, and as soon as Jay turns off the lights, she takes the hammer and pulls out the nail from her hand. And the moment Lars turned on the lights, she hits him with a hammer and takes the gun. Ash returns shortly, and the two have a standoff as Darby threatens to shoot Lars and he threatens to shoot her, and Jay then hits Ash's nail gun with a hammer, which makes him accidentally shoot it, and the nail shoots directly into Lars's forehead. Darby and Jay then run out of the cabin as Ash tries to save Lars, but Lars falls face down and dies. Ash then goes out and shoots his nail gun out onto Darby's car, and even though they were attempting to leave, they end up crashing into a pole and get knocked unconscious. He then lights the cabin on fire, but before he can get back to the car, Officer Ron arrives at the scene, and Ash hides his nail gun and tells Ron that there's been an accident, but Ron tells him to get his hands up, but Darby then wakes up and shoots Ash on the side, and Ron shoots Darby in the gut in response. Ash then takes back his gun and shoots and kills Ron, and he then comes back to Darby, and as he prepares to kill her, taunting her with his gun, she uses her screwdriver to stab him in his neck and kills him. She then crawls over to Ron and uses his radio to call for help. And 48 days later, Darby is back in rehab, and this time she's taken it seriously, and after her meeting, she finds her sister Devon who came to visit her, and the movie ends as the two embrace each other with a big hug. If you want to watch more creepy horror movie recaps, make sure to subscribe and leave a comment. We'll see you next time. Bye.